Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session for the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the examination point of view. Let's start our today's discussion by taking the important articles. The important articles which feature in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper are on our screens. Let's take up the first important article. The first important article appears in the newspaper reads, "Minority status in India is state dependent," says Supreme Court. Now this is a very important issue with respect to the polity section that we study and becomes important for us from the point of view of GS2, right, where we study the important issues of polity and constitutional provisions. So what is this case about the minority status? So a certain section of citizens put out a petition in the Supreme Court which contended that the Hindus are in a minority in 6 states and 3 union territories of India, but were allegedly not able to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice because of non-identification of minority at the state level, thus jeopardizing their basic rights guaranteed under Article 29 and 30. Now, so as we can see, the central focus of this issue is under Article 29 and 30, which are broadly, we will be dealing with these articles, which broadly guarantee certain rights to certain sections as well as minorities, minority communities. So what is the issue? So a certain petition was instituted in the Supreme Court saying that certain communities in country are identified as minorities. We know that there are certain communities such as the Muslims, Jains, Buddhists, Sikhs, such communities. But the petition contends that even Hindus, which is nationally the majority community of India, but in certain states they are in minority, such as they show evidence as per 2011 census where Hindus have become a minority in Lakshadweep. So only 2.5% people in Lakshadweep are Hindu, belonging to Hindu community, and in Mizoram, in Nagaland, Meghalaya, Jammu and Kashmir, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur and Punjab. So in these particular states, if we only consider the population of the state, the community of the Hindu community comes out as a minority, and that is what the petition is saying, that the recognition of minority status should also be given to the Hindu community in these states. And the basis on which they ask is that they should be given the minority status in these states in accordance with the principle laid down by the Supreme Court in its 2002 TMA Pi Foundation ruling. Now this is a Supreme Court judgment in which Supreme Court deliberated on this issue of minority as to who exactly is a minority in this country, how do we ascertain the status of minority, is it ascertained on a national level, which means that those communities which are in minority numbers at the national level will only be known as the minority, or should they be considered at the state level as well, where in a particular state if a community is in minority numbers, can that community be considered as a minority in that particular state itself. So in this TMA Pi case, Supreme Court adhered and affirmed this principle that the minorities can be recognized at the state level as well, where Supreme Court had said that for the purposes of Article 30 that deals with the rights of minorities to establish and administer education institutions, religious and linguistic minorities have to be considered state-wise. Now this became a very significant landmark judgment by Supreme Court, wherein it identified that the basis of ascertaining minority is not just on national level but is also on the state level. So this is the current context on which the petition is landing. So from our examination point of view, let's look at the status of minorities and the provisions of minorities in the Constitution. So which are the provisions which deal with minorities? So Article 29 and Article 30 are 2 articles which deal with the rights of minorities. So first of all, the term minority is nowhere defined in the Indian Constitution. No one defines who exactly is a minority, and that is why Supreme Court had to intervene and give its judgment and interpretation. However, the Constitution recognizes 2 kinds of minorities. One is religious minorities and other is linguistic minorities. So 2 kinds of minorities can exist. who can take the benefit of these articles, and that is, one is religious minorities, which we were talking about right now, those communities which are classified on the basis of their religion, and second is linguistic minority, communities who speak a definite language, and those communities who are less in number in a particular state or at the national level would be known as linguistic minorities. So which are the rights that they get? So Article 29 provides that any section of the citizens residing in any part of India having a distinct language, script or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the same. Now, is this a right provided only to minorities under Article 29? Can we see that it is mentioned any section of the citizens, which means that this right is not just for the minority but can be utilized or taken use of by any section of the citizens. So it is meant for the majority community as well. So residing in any part has the right to preserve its distinct language, script or culture. So any section of citizen can choose to do so. It grants protection to both religious minorities as well as linguistic minorities, right, on the basis of language, culture. However, the SC held that the scope of this article is not necessarily restricted to minorities only. As we can see, the statement is very broadly stated, that of any section of citizens. So it can be interpreted in the to include majority as well, right. So this is the first Article 29, which gives right to any section of citizens to basically conserve their distinct language, script or culture. So here is where the right to conserve their particular language, script and culture flows. And then Article 30 is the specialized right which gives all minorities shall have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. So this is a very specific right. What kind of a right? Where all the minorities which exist will have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. So if there is any minority community wanting to establish an educational institution and run that educational institution, so only the minorities will have that right. That is why we see a lot of religious or other minority institutions for the educational purposes. Here is where the petition is taking its plea from, that the Hindu community which are there in these Hindu minority states are not being allowed to establish and administer their educational institutions of their choice in the states, and that is why the petition asks that the community be labeled as a minority in these particular states as well. Therefore, the protection under Article 30 is confined only to minorities, right, religious and linguistic, and does not extend to any section of citizens. Now, so in this case where we stand, because we see that the Supreme Court has already ruled that the minority status has to be granted state-wise, even the Supreme Court in this particular case is of the opinion that the granting of the status of minority in these particular states can be granted on the basis of a community being a minority on a state basis. So Supreme Court has also affirmed to this, but the case is yet to be completed and it is listed for hearing. But the concept became important for us, so that is why we discuss this from the examination point of view. Now further, with respect to minorities, whenever we talk about it, who is the authority to decide who is the minority? So let's talk on that. Who are the minorities which are notified by the Government of India, and who decides which community will be the minority? So currently only those communities notified under the Section 2C of the National Commission for Minorities Act 1992 by the central government are regarded as the minority. Now this act is also the authority to decide who can be the minority, and since this particular act gives central government the power to decide who the minority is, that is why the problem arose in the petition by the way of the petition first. So as we can see, the act is the National Commission for Minorities Act, which was established in 1992. Before that, there was a body known as the Minority Commission, which used to decide on this matter, but in 1992 this National Commission for Minorities Act and this commission was given a statutory status. So what do we mean by statutory status? Which means that Parliament decided to make a law on it. And similarly, the NCM Act of 1992 was formed and the National Commission for Minorities was made a statutory body, and this body, which has a chairperson and other members, is the body now to decide who is going to be the minority in the country. So this is the body which decides, and in 1993 the first statutory national commission was set up, and 5 religious communities, the Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists and Zoroastrians or Parsis, were notified as minority communities, and in 2014 Jains were also notified as a minority community. So this is a history with respect to who are the minorities and who decides the minorities in the country. So which is that body? National Commission for Minorities under the National Commission for Minorities Act of 1992. This was a discussion with respect to the minorities and the rights and provisions related to them in the constitution. With this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, "The Shanghai Cooperation Organization and its stature in the modern world." Now this article has appeared because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in itself has a lot of strategic importance, and few new developments have happened in with regards to this organization. What are those developments? That apart from its member countries, countries such as Iran and Belarus are now showing their interest to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So we'll talk about these new developments, Shanghai Cooperation Organization's structure and its provisions and its development or its stature in the current world order, right? So before that, in order to see the importance of this organization, in this year's prelims examination itself, we have seen a question on Shanghai Cooperation Organization, wherein it is asked that India is a member of which of the above, right? So this is how we analyze from the past year's question paper as to, because the organization has already been asked, there is the reason why UPSC has focused on it, and it is because of the growing importance of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Why is Shanghai Cooperation Organization important? Let's look at it. So we'll take a look at this map. First, let's look at talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is a permanent intergovernmental international organization, and it is a Eurasian political, economic and military organization aiming to maintain peace, security and stability in the region. This organization is actually an intergovernmental organization among the countries in which the major countries are, which we can see, which are marked in blue. So Russia, China, Kazakhstan, right, and other Central Asian countries such as Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. These are the countries which make up the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is why we can see the importance of this organization is because of the inclusion of Russia and China, which makes this organization a very important one. So talking about the developments, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was initially created in 2001, where it was known as the Shanghai 5. Earlier it was not known as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Why? Because there were only 5 members. Which were those 5 members? Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia and Tajikistan. So in 2001 the Shanghai 5 was formed, and later in 2001 another country of Uzbekistan was added to the grouping, and from then onwards it was known as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And India became an observer state in 2005 to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and finally in 2017 India and Pakistan became a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So who are the current members? The initial 5: China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan. Then Uzbekistan was added, and then in 2017 India and Pakistan were added in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So currently the 8-member organization from the observer state status, which is granted to Belarus, Iran, Afghanistan and Mongolia. From these 2 countries, Belarus and Iran, are set to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So we can see the geographical extent of it. This is Iran and this is Belarus. They are countries which are strategically located adjacent to Russia and in the Asian region. That is why these countries are showing keen interest to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We'll discuss on them. Let's first look at the other aspects of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what are their objectives when we talk about this organization? Strengthening mutual trust and neighborliness among the member states and promoting effective cooperation in politics, trade and economy, research and technology and culture, and enhancing ties in education, energy, transport, tourism, environmental protection and other things, and most of all, maintain and secure peace, security and stability in the region. So among the major objectives for this organization, this organization is mainly set up to cooperate on areas of politics, trade and economy and other things, and on a very significant ground to maintain the stability of the region, the Central Asian and the other Asian region. So to maintain safety, security and stability in this region. So that is why this organization was set up, right? We saw the membership and about the structure of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So which is the head governing body which takes all the decision, that is the heads of state council. All the prime ministers generally, or the heads of the state or all the countries, make up this council, wherein which forms the supreme SCO body which decides its internal functioning and its interaction with other states and international organization and considers international issues. So this is the governing body which is the premier decision making body of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And then is the heads of government council as well, which approves the budget, considers and decides upon issues related to economic spheres of interaction within the SCO, which takes primarily the economic decisions. And then is the Council of Minister of Foreign Affairs, which considers issues related to day-to-day activities and the foreign affairs. And then is an important body in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization known as Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, or the RATS mechanism. This mechanism is set up to check the activities of terrorism established to combat terrorism, separatism and extremism. So it becomes important for India to indulge in this organization. Why? Because as we can see, both Russia and China are members of this organization, and it becomes important to engage with these two countries and also maintain good relations with the other Central Asian countries as well, which are a part of this organization. So that is why this organization holds a lot of importance for India. Now coming to the current context, why are Belarus and Iran wanting to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Now as we know, with the Russia-Ukraine war that has happened and changed the status of world order, a lot of countries are looking for their allies and where to align in order to protect themselves. So Belarus, as we know, is a country we saw in the map. It was adjacent to Russia and it has granted its support to Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war. So, and we know that the NATO expansion, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is headed by US and other European counterparts, is advancing in the European region, wherein Sweden and Finland have recently joined the NATO. So even countries who want to side with other parties are showing interest to join other such security organizations. So Belarus is therefore keen to join Russia and China in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And then Iran, why is Iran keen to join this organization? So if we can recall the relations between Iran and USA, we know that there are a lot of tensions between these two countries, where USA is keen to deregulate the nuclear capacity of Iran, and Iran wants to combat USA, and therefore it wants to join the grouping of Russia and a grouping which contains countries such as Russia and China, so that it can also leverage its position, and it also forms a part of Iran's policy to look east, wherein after indulging in with other nations of the western part, it is also looking eastwards and indulging with these countries which lie in the Asian and South Asian region. So that is a part of both these countries' interest to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So this was a discussion related to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and its current provisions and the stature that it holds, right? So with this, we come to an end of today's discussion, and we'll meet again tomorrow with the important articles for the day. Thank you.